Hi, everyone. I'm Grace Carrison, and I lead LinkedIn Sales Solutions in APAC. Thanks for joining us for our inaugural APAC edition of our Live with Sales Leaders series. Today, I'm thrilled to be in discussion with 3 business leaders who will share with us their point of view and experience in transforming sales and marketing organizations, and in particular, show others how they can sustain their transformation by building a digital sales culture in sales. But before we get started, we do have a few housekeeping that I'd like to note. First is that audio is only available via the On24 platform, and there is no dial-in. But we'll send you a recording of the live broadcast within a week after the event. Second is that if you're experiencing any audio issues or can't see the live broadcast, please enable Flash and refresh your browser. The recommended browsers for the best experience are Chrome and Firefox. And finally, for those viewing on LinkedIn Live or On24, we have question managers on the line, so please ask your questions through the webcast in the Q&A panel. We will go through some of these during the session, but we'll answer most of the questions via the console. So today, we're going to delve into topics like what it means to enable a digital culture in a B2B sales organization, the increasing importance and role of technology in unlocking actionable data and insight for sales and marketing functions, and then LinkedIn's role in the B2B transformation to date, and as we start to focus as a region towards a business recovery. But first, let's introduce our 3 special guests, Carolyn Chin-Perry, Regan Berry, and Mihir Deshpande. Now, we have a special position at LinkedIn when doing intros, and that's to share something about yourself that's not currently on your LinkedIn profile. So Carolyn, will start with you. Can you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your role in your company, and then tell us one thing that's not on your LinkedIn profile.
Hi, greetings from Singapore. Hi, everybody. My name is Carolyn Chin-Perry, as what Grace said. I'm the Digital Innovation Leader for PwC Singapore, where I help clients with their digital transformation journeys. In addition to that, I also help to look after PwC's Asia Pacific digital upskilling program for our 84,000 employees in this region. What's not in my LinkedIn profile is that I'm a really big foodie, so much so that when I did my master's degree 20 years ago, I did my thesis on the restaurant industry. So definitely a foodie there.
Wonderful. Thank you, Carolyn. Regan, why don't we go to you?
Grace, thank you very much. It's great to be with you all. Everyone, I lead our commercial transformation team within Telstra. Telstra is the largest telco in Australia, and then I lead all our commercial digital transformation and sales operations outside of Australia. The best thing I could say, and someone reminded me to say today, is I don't normally sport a beard. I'm in the midst of growing a moustache for Movember, which we're supporting heavily at Telstra. So if we hadn't been doing this in a couple of weeks, Grace, you would have seen me with a hopefully not too seedy moustache.
Great. Thanks, Regan. And Mihir, over to you.
Thank you, Grace, and good morning, afternoon, and evening to everyone on the call. I lead strategy, marketing, and e-commerce for Thermo Fisher Scientific in India. Thermo Fisher Scientific is the world leader in serving science with annual revenues of about $25 billion. And at Thermo Fisher, our mission is to enable our customers to make the world healthier, cleaner, and safer. And the global coronavirus outbreak has been a powerful reminder of the importance of our mission. Something that is not on my LinkedIn profile is something that I picked up as a skill very recently. I have been cooking for the last 6-7 months, and something that I learned thanks to the lockdowns. We are a big family of 7, so I spend about an hour and a half, and we collaborate amongst each other to do that. So that's not on my LinkedIn profile. Thanks, Grace. Back to you.
Great. Thanks, Mihir. It seems like Mihir and Carolyn, there's some commonalities around love for food, virtual cooking perhaps. And Regan, you can definitely count on me as far as supporting you for Movember. So let's get started. So what we're going to do first is we're going to speak to our panel. I'll be asking each of them a question. So let's start with when we talk about the importance of building digital sales culture, I think a good place to start is to recognize how much of the landscape has shifted already. Companies have been incorporating remote working and virtual selling for quite some time now, but it was really COVID that accelerated the shift, as companies across industries had to quickly pivot to a new way of doing business and engaging with customers. Before I ask Caroline a question, I do want to highlight a couple of things that, a couple of insights from our LinkedIn's 2020 State of Sales report for APAC, in which earlier on, as COVID was impacting the region, 96% of B2B companies shifted to remote or virtual selling. Based on our follow-up survey in May, 83% of those companies expect to maintain that change in their sales models permanently. So what does this mean? It means that the sales organizations who have embraced and are sustaining that digital culture will be at an advantage, because post-COVID, what we'll have is a hybrid business environment. So not only that you have to be good at selling and building relationships in person, but you also need to be good in doing that from remote. In fact, the sellers that are performing well in this current period are the ones that recognize the importance of empathy, trust, and insights to build client relationships way beyond the current crisis. And interestingly, in APAC, between March and April, during the onset of COVID across the region, we saw a spike of 95% in March, and then another 110% in April on our LinkedIn learning platform, with sales professionals actively completing social selling course. So with that, we asked sales leaders if leading through change was more important now than it was 5 years ago. And 76% across Australia and Singapore, and an overwhelming 87% in India agreed. And unsurprisingly, change has been our constant in this region in 2020. Carolyn, first question for you. In your role at PwC, you work with clients across industries who are in varying stages in their digital transformation. As you look back over the past 7 to 8 months, what were the biggest shifts that you saw or observed before and during the height of the global pandemic?
I would say that definitely a lot of organizations who were in the B2C space were already usually in a digital space, but there were also some bricks and mortar type of organizations that had to flip into a digital model very, very quickly. Some did it with a lot of thought, and others was fairly haphazard, shall I say, and even those in the B2B space as well. So I think, like what you said, the whole personalized, empathetic journey is something that's really important for all buyers, regardless of whether they're a consumer or whether they're a business. I think one of the key things to note from a sales perspective is actually the ability to build trust online, which is extremely difficult. So if a client has, or your customers are used to seeing you in an analog space, maybe face-to-face and so forth, being able to flip that digital mode is something which can be quite new for some. And also about how you actually go about building that trust, because there's lots of considerations in that space in terms of how you hold customer data, how you hold payment information and so forth. So I think, for me, I have seen, many organizations throughout different industries, and I work across different industries, flip their models, and some do it very successfully, and some are lagging. And also for those who have been really fast in their shift, in some ways, they're actually really looking back now and reflecting as to what they can do to improve. And also things like being able to realize if they have any cyber risk in that move that was quite fast for them.
Thanks, Caroline. And I agree with you around the ability to build trust in both from a physical sense, but also from a remote. And we are seeing that in our state of sales research as well. My next question is to Reagan. Telstra as a company has been on a digitization journey long before the pandemic hit, which you've been leading globally for Telstra International. At the height of pandemic, as an essential service, your inside sales organization based in Manila was 100% up, working remotely, servicing customers, and scaling to meet market demand. Can you share with the audience, how have you gone through that Telstra international transformation journey over the last couple of years?
Yeah, absolutely, Grace. We've been on a transformation journey about how we work remotely, and it's part of our culture and part of our DNA here at Telstra. And obviously, when the pandemic hit, it just means that we needed to accelerate that even further, because as you said, Grace, we are essential service providers, so our customers and our clients were looking to us to make sure we could help them and support them through their challenges. So we need to make sure that we had our own backyard up and running and effectively to make sure we can support our customers. As you mentioned, our inside sales division that's based in Manila, we set that up over the past sort of 2 years as sort of a key support function for our entire global sales business. And we were really pleased that we'd done the planning, we'd worked really hard on getting that set up, that when the pandemic hit and a lot of areas across the world were significantly impacted, we were able to move that to an entirely remote work from home organisation, and it continued to function entirely. I think what the pandemic's taught us more than anything here at Telstra is just the pace of change and how we need to keep staying ahead of trends and making sure that we're challenging the status quo, challenging the way we operate, and making sure that we're thinking ahead, not 1, 2, 3 years, but sort of 5, 10 years ahead for what the next Black Swan event will be, to make sure that we're set up, that we can support our customers and that we can provide for them and help them on their transformation journey. So we've learned a lot from what we've done. We're accelerating our digitisation and digital transformation programs, and hopefully that gives us a good experience and first-hand experience. Then we can help customers on their journeys as well.
Thanks, Regan. You mentioned the pace of change and always challenging the status quo, and so it means like that digitization journey doesn't stop. Doesn't stop at any point, and it's really planning ahead over the next 5 to 10 years. We'll move over to Mihir. So Mihir, similar to Telstra, there is a planned sales transformation before COVID hit. But back in April, when India was starting its lockdown, that transformation was accelerated. You have over 1,000 salespeople or sales reps that you've had to move to remote selling within 15 days. Now, can you take us through that period, including those moments where you needed to make quick decisions and also make decisions to move quickly?
Yeah, thank you, Grace. And as you rightly said, the period of March 2020 and April was disruptive as India pressed the pause button. And, it was probably one of the most difficult periods for businesses. And I'm sure, like me, it was one of the most uncertain periods we've experienced in our professional careers. Now, COVID-19 really changed how B2B companies like that of ours engage and interact with our customers. While the full implications of pandemic are still uncertain, it is very clear that the markets will continue to be challenging. And our priority as leaders has been to continuously evolve our marketing tactics while focusing on the customers and teams. For Thermo Fisher, we accelerated the key transformation areas into weeks as against an earlier landscape. And as I reflect on the last 6 months, our teams have done a commendable job in adopting to the new normal, worked hard to win new businesses, and identified ways to build relationships with customers, build trust online, and also identify new customer segments. And there are a few factors that helped us scale up faster. First of all, it was about the choices that we made. At the start of the pandemic, we articulated our choices to unify some of the core processes. This helped us align our diverse businesses of Thermo Fisher towards a common path. Second, we focused on prioritization and driving high execution rigor. And I still remember having those conversations with the LinkedIn teams as well as we were trying to get the sales navigator. So given the nature of some of our instruments and technologies, the sales teams needed to have multiple interactions and engagements with customers. So these interactions would also include product demonstrations and visit to our customer experience centers. But as soon as India had a lockdown, one of the biggest challenges we had was to facilitate that entire process online. So we partnered with LinkedIn for the Sales Navigator tool. The training was completed within 3 days, And we saw a great response wherein we had more than 96% active users through the lockdown period. And that helped us get some of the new customer businesses, and the teams were able to connect with thousands of customers. Similarly, we developed some of the immersive tools, leveraging AR and VR virtual experience, and selecting some of these few tools helped us prioritize in these areas. But last and more important thing that we did was tracking up all of this at a daily and weekly level. And the leadership commitment towards that was something that was critical. Thanks, Grace. Back to you.
All right, thank you. So the key takeaways during that period is really its choices as far as to unifying the tools that you've used, leading from the front, so strong leadership support, but also measuring that. And the third piece is really a focus on prioritization. Thank you, Mihir. What you've also shared, Mihir, is a trend that we've also seen from the State of Sales report, and that is the growing importance and role sales technology is playing in unlocking the insights sales need to win and grow in today's B2B relationship-led marketplaces. The report shows that the highest performers are getting smarter and leveraging sales intelligence tools. And 74% of sales professionals view that it is critical to closing deals. As companies transform, the adoption of digital tools is massive, but just as important is sustaining that adoption. So this is gonna be more of a question for the whole panel. You shared with us, a look back over the last 8 months. In the context of sustaining change, and I know Mihir, you touched on that a little bit. And institutionalizing a digital culture within organizations, may that be people, process, and technology perspective. What would you say are the learnings and opportunities over the past 8 months that you would call out? Why don't we start with Carolyn, and then Mihir, and then Reagan?
I think a really good digital culture is very integral to the implementation of anything successful digitally, to be very honest. And what does a digital culture really mean? I think it's very much one that stems from trust, which I mentioned earlier, because I think without trust, it's really hard for a sales team to be successful, or any organization to be successful. So being able to trust your own fellow team members as well as your manager is really important, but also being able to ensure that you are always enhancing trust in the external market, maybe to the public or to your customers and clients. In addition to that, it's also being able to admit that you don't know everything. I think in the digital world, even your digital experts will say that they don't know everything. So there needs to be a willingness to try, a willingness to learn, and also to support each other in that journey itself. In my mind, if you look at the technologies and tools that are out there, they're very much like fire, where you can weld metal and build great structures together, or it can also be the reverse, which is to burn your whole house down. I think with digital culture, having a positive one really helps to ensure that, the types of upskilling that needs to occur to support, say, for example, a sales intelligence tool is really enhanced when your leader uses it and demonstrates that he's leading by example, but also for him to provide, or her to provide that upskilling opportunities for the team to get used to something that's completely new. Otherwise, it just ends up being a white elephant. And I think I've seen many organizations across many industries through the decades, implement lots of fancy tools and technology that's extremely expensive, multi-million type of investments. But sometimes they actually fail, and it's actually not the tool or the device that was failing. It's actually very much that they didn't have the right culture and people to actually learn the tool well and adopt it. So I think change management is something that's really very important, Grace.
Thanks, Caroline. And we definitely see that with many of our customers today around change management. And so we actively make sure that it does, it's led from the top. The leaders need to lead from the front and demonstrate how they're using that tool. Because as you said, otherwise it just becomes a best practice, for that point in time. Before we get the other panelists, I just want to let you know that we are live on the LinkedIn platform as well. So you can ask your questions there. After we hear from Mihir and Reagan, what we'll do is we'll take a couple of questions from the audience. Over to you, Mihir.
Thank you, Grace. And so Grace, today, if you look at the the world today, we and organizations, we are experience what I would term as a state of punctuated equilibria, where the already volatile, ambiguous, uncertain, complex world, which did exist prior to March of 2020, has been eclipsed, and these factors have been multiplied 20-fold. And when you look at this context, and as I reflect back on the last 7 to 8 months, I've summarized my learning under the following 3 areas. The first thing I want to talk to you about is leadership, because this is a real test of leadership, and thereby the onus lies there. Successful navigation of punctuated equilibria requires focus on both evolutionary and revolutionary change. It lies in our ability to compete successfully by increasing alignment among, strategy, structure, culture, processes, while simultaneously preparing for something inevitable or something, revolutionary that will happen in this discontinuous environment. Then we also need to identify a strategic inflection point, and there could be several strategic inflection points that would come along with this journey. And our aim is to define the overall signal to noise ratio, identify what are the barriers to change. At times, we would have managers and leaders, in fact, resisting this change because there's a fear that they might turn obsolete in terms of their skill sets. So it's very critical for leadership to support the overall organization to navigate through this change and also make critical choices in terms of what we will do, and also articulate what we will not do through this period. The second point I want to talk about is focus on technology. Now, it's important that you build a robust technology and tools roadmap that improve customer experience, but it is equally important that you invest in improving the sales force productivity and skill sets, thereby the ease of doing business. Technology and business cannot operate in isolation. You need to identify that these are the key stakeholders to driving change, and technology and tools should complement and support across this lead generation funnel. Investing in a sales team is very, very critical. You need to upgrade their skills. You need to have an expectation setting, real-time issue resolution, one person at a time. And this could potentially be a 24/7 job sometimes, but it's critical that when you're driving that change for a large field force, you need to invest in that time. And then you need to keep the process iterative as we keep moving and keep getting more and more learnings. The third part, the last part that I want to talk about is the data-driven prioritization and driving execution excellence, something that I focused in my earlier conversation as well. With the ever-increasing focus, on productivity and leaner structures, that there are more tasks to do than what we can achieve. So ruthless prioritization is something which is very important. You define it not just for yourself, but for your entire team. You help them focus, and then you drive decision-making via use of data. Such scenarios mandate massive decentralization of decision-making at times, but you need to achieve consistency through different ways, either by driving individualized accountability, constant communications, and strong financial and social controls. Back to you, Grace.
Great. Thanks, Mihir. Love the common theme around change management. And as you said, is the ongoing upskilling or retraining, but also in managing expectations. And also the fact that because you are using technology, is that you have like that data and the insights, to help you with that prioritization. Reagan, what are your thoughts?
Thanks, Grace. Look, I'd agree with Mihir and Carolyn. I want to take it sort of a step further that as well as digital transformation has to be part of a cultural norm, has to be part of your organisation, I think the other thing that builds on leadership, it is the investment in people. And what I mean by that is you can't just give someone a tool and expect them to change overnight. You can't just suddenly say, this is the new process, this is what we're doing. It's change management, but actually requires a really focused, strategic investment, time and effort into changing people's mindset and cultures. As I said, if I look at Telstra, we've got flexible ways of working has been part of our culture. That doesn't just happen overnight. That's been happening in Australia for the best part of a decade. And then if we look around our global offices and where we operate across 20 different countries, it's at different stages of that evolution and on that journey. I'm currently speaking to you today from Hong Kong, where the concept of working from home was not something that was heavily embraced in our Hong Kong office. Compare that to, say, Melbourne and Sydney as an example, where people are working from home 2 or 3 days a week. So it's something that we've had to work very hard at in how we can help our people and help change the culture and change the cultural norms to shift along that journey. And as I said, it really requires that deep focus, planning and attention. It's not something that can just happen overnight. I think what COVID has taught us is, yes, you need to respond quickly, and there's those immediate changes where you have to suddenly stand up new operations, stand up new technology, but doing that just as a once-off is not actually going to drive you long-term success, productivity, or the right benefits you're driving. It's got to be part of, and Mahir spoke about it perfectly, a data-driven prioritisation and approach. And it's got to be something where you actually invest time and effort from a leadership team level to understand that to drive a cultural change is incredibly difficult. And if you want to be successful, you've got to put time in it, you've got to put effort in, and you've got to understand that people respond differently in different cultures. And not everyone is going to embrace new tools just straight away. You've got to spend time in understanding their needs, understanding how they will respond, and then taking them along that change journey. But that change journey is not just, okay, we're going from, for example, selling customer face-to-face versus virtual. It's actually that evolution of changing their thinking and their mindset and their approach to make it a new norm and a new way that we go about it. What we did here in International, one of those steps was we introduced Sales Navigator that many here spoke about, but that was a journey that we've been on for sort of 2 years. It wasn't something that we suddenly did because of COVID. It was something that we recognised probably 18 months to 2 years ago, that if we wanted to be successful in a new digital connected world, we needed to move our sales force to be more digitally connected around the world. Our customers are changing the way they want to work. They're changing the way they want to interact with us. And we need to make sure that we could help them on that journey and respond to them effectively. So my key learnings and key takeaways is it's leadership, it's about people and investment in people, and it's about deliberate structured planning. That's the only way to really drive that success in digital transformation.
Thanks, Reagan. The other thing that you pointed out when we were having a conversation this week is really that deep focus and attention and a planned approach. And as you said, this thing doesn't happen. Change doesn't happen overnight, and you need to make that investment. We've actually got quite a few questions coming in from the audience. I think we'll go with Reagan, since you've just actually taken us through that. Why don't we just add on? I think you might have touched on it already, but just in cases, we've got Xavier Lin, who has a question for you. Can you elaborate how sales is up 100% with remote sales teams? If you could walk us through a case study, that would be great.
Thanks, Sophie, for the question. So we're not, I'm not, maybe missed what I said. When I said we were 100%, we remained 100% online and functioning. Our performance has not changed or dropped. It's actually slightly up by about 10% pre-COVID versus post-COVID from our inside sales organisation. The key focus for us there was, if you look across the rest of the world, a lot of areas, particularly in the Philippines and India, for example, they did have sort of those shutdown periods, and particularly some of our external providers, they sort of were unable to meet their commitments to us. So what we were able to do is, because we in-sourced and all our people in our inside sales function are part of our business, we had immediate control over BCP, and we were able to mobilise it and ramp up really quickly. But more importantly, because we'd already got that organisation working remotely, so they're based in Manila, but they support EMEA time zone, US, Australia, Asia. They runs on a 24/5. But then moving from working from the office to working from home was nothing that we couldn't handle. There was obviously some challenges with connectivity and equipment, but that was quick and easy. The culture was already there. The processes and the way that we worked was already there. And we were able to come through COVID with a minimal impact to our business outcomes. As I said, in fact, there was an increased demand for telco services, particularly at the start of COVID, and we were able to respond effectively and efficiently because of the systems we'd put in place to make sure that we were robust. Some key learnings that we've taken out of that is we need to keep doing more. We need to keep upskilling and investing in our people and going along that journey. But we were confident that our baseline foundations was what got us through.
Right. Thank you, Reagan. I've got a question from Georgia Wilson. And I think, Mahir, you might want to take this, and Caroline, you want to add on to it. How can we overcome the challenge of winning clients' trust with this move to digital? The reason I was thinking of you, Mahir, is recognizing again the business that Thermo Fisher is in. Really, as you said, is used to bringing clients into your experience center, and then you've had to do that, from remote. And then Caroline, if you can add on to Mahir after that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's very important that we recognize that building trust online is important and is a challenge. And the reason why it is a challenge is because we live in a very complex, cluttered, too many messaging, too many communications, at times too many people connecting with a particular person online right now. So it's very cluttered world. The best way to approach that is in simplifying and unifying your messaging. So you do not look at the traditional and the digital boundaries differently. Make sure that your message is unified. And then that message needs to be aligned with your culture and your mission and your values. And then try and use different tools or use different mediums or use different channels to communicate that messaging. And then that consistency in messaging, and of course, driven through appropriate technology tools. As I said, building the technology frontier across all the lead generation funnel points would help you drive larger value and thereby improve the trust score with your customers as well.
And if I could build on to what Mahir had said, I totally agree with his points on a unified message, as well as then building out on tools and different channels. I think some other ways is also about how you manage your customer expectations. I think that sometimes the expectations may or may not change from the analog world into the digital world, but I think it's about having clear and timely communications that is concise, and also being able to reassure them in terms of if you're collecting data, how the data is actually being stored, how it's actually being used, whether it's compliant and so forth, as well as privacy considerations as well. So I think these different factors will help build that trust.
Great. Actually,
sorry. Like I say, if I can just add, I think the other thing is it's also being genuine, authentic, that every company is going through the same experiences. So yes, Telstra may have a slight advantage in this because we're in the telco industry, but we're facing many of the same challenges that many of our customers and our suppliers are facing. So being open and honest and actually having that authentic conversation and being prepared to, I think Carolyn called out before, that we don't know all the answers and things are tough and there's not an immediate solution to everything, but building that journey, going along that journey and building trust along that journey is really, really important. And I think that's something that we need to not forget as we shift to a more digital sales world, and there are a lot of scams and those things that people don't always build that trust straight away. It's much easier to do it in person, but it is a journey, and being open, authentic in those conversations, I think, is really important.
Right. Thanks, Reagan. And the other one that I wanted to add to that is really around making sure that it's not just a product, feature, or function outreach, that you actually have done the research on how your product or service is going to be relevant to that to that buyer, and really understanding how you could help them and potentially identify challenges or problems that they may not even be aware of. Just adding on to this, we have a question from Jasmine Vincent, and I think all three of you can add on to it. Is what's the advice for businesses that are deeply traditionally in B2B, businesses that are done by email and face to face? Who wants to start?
Well, if I can share a perspective. So I think we do not need to look at digital as a different medium than traditional. Any business, the way it has been, the overall objective is to create value for the organization. And that value can be created by, of course, the expanding our top line, but also improving our productivity, efficiencies, customer experience, and thereby building our profitability and cash flows. Digital and in an integrated way offers you an opportunity to connect with your customers in a much more productive fashion. It also offers your customers to engage with your brand quite intimately as against the traditional channels. It also helps you in driving, as I said, consistency in messaging across. So thereby, the opportunities that you can get via going digital is much more than what you would be able to do in your traditional brick and mortar. So these are some of the points for you to consider. But yes, as I mentioned earlier, you need to make sure that when you drive this culture change and when you drive the strategy change, make sure that you involve and engage your larger team, communicate with them, and focus on connecting with your stakeholders in terms of adoption to change one person at a time.
I completely agree with Mahir. Usually I like to be slightly different, but he's raised all the great points there, from team engagement and trust, as well as being able to add value to your customers. Clearly, being able to be customer centric is really important. It's definitely not a new buzzword or anything like that. It's been around for a good 5 to 7 years, but that never really ever loses its flavor. I think regardless of what mode, whether it's digital, analog, or hybrid, customer centricity and being obsessed with your customer is really very important. So, I want people to remember that while we might see acceleration of digital transformation, especially because of COVID, the truth is there's some fundamental business values that should never change, and being customer centric is definitely one of them. Being able to build trust and always thinking about how you can add value to your customers is really important. Outside of that, some of the advice I have, in addition to Mahir's great advice, is around really thinking about your current business model. What are some of the opportunities out there that you're not necessarily leveraging on in a digital space? What are some of the industry trends that are out there? What are some of your competitors doing? Is there a need to follow? Is there something that you can do differently? Does that truly matter to your customer in terms of adding value to what they need? And also having a very considered approach to your change. So making sure that you have the change management, your teams on board, and also really making sure that those fundamentals I mentioned earlier around trust, customer centricity, as well as value is front and center to what you're doing.
Thanks, Carolyn. Reagan, is there anything that you want to add?
Well, the best advice I can say is it can be daunting moving to a digital world, but take it in bite-sized pieces. Don't expect that overnight you're going to go from being if you are a very traditional way in the way you do business to suddenly being fully digital. Don't set those unrealistic expectations for yourself. Look at where your business is at, as Carolyn was saying. Look at what your business is, what your customers are asking for, and then work on what you can achieve and through small incremental steps. So it's an evolution. It's not something you just flick the switch on overnight. Meet your customers' needs and you'll be successful.
Love it. I love the, all three of you spoke about, the customer being at the center. It is change management and really, being able to do that in bite size. From a LinkedIn perspective, which we'll have another kind of sales leader series on that. We call that when buyers win, sellers win. And this is, again, it's, with the change and companies, across the board and, driving digital transformation, and that is a continuous approach. 83% are saying that they're going to change. They're not going to change their sales model. What that means then is, there is going to be a hybrid environment where the engagement with your client or your customer is going to be in person, but as well as from remote. And building trust, being client centricity, needs to happen on both sides. So as Carolyn said, is from analog to analog or digital. It's the same context around client centricity. I've got a question from Arun Murthy. with all the investments that companies are making towards digital ways of selling, do you see inside sales taking precedence over field sales, even after the pandemic is over? If yes, how do you see this model helping build better relationships and trust, which is very important for any organization? Who would like to take this first, and then we'll move on to the next panel question.
I'll jump in quickly. I think there will always be if we're talking about inside sales versus field, there will always be a demand for both areas of the organisation in a sales force. I think what we're seeing is, though, a greater investment in an inside sales type approach to shift workloads and manage what can be managed from an inside sales perspective. But then fundamentally, all the data and all the research shows, particularly on big purchases, customers will want to speak to someone in person or have that more closer relationship with having people on the ground. Now, virtually is also a very good way of doing it, but people that they can build that sort of trust relationships. We all know that a lot of sales is based on relationships. Just because people are sitting in what is deemed an inside sales organisation or virtual doesn't mean that those relationships can't be built up over time. We have many customers that are served from what we would call a desk-based service model or desk-based sales model, but those same customers and those same account managers have been working together for the best part of 2 to 3 years, and they've built up really strong relationships, even though they may sit on different sides of the world. So I think for any organisation, when you're thinking about what works and what doesn't, you just need to go through and, again, respond to what your customers want and then what makes sense for your business effectively. You'll find some customers will be, yep, cool, field is where I really need my support. Other organisations will say, really happy with sort of an inside sale and a desk-based model. So it's really what's going to work for your customers and what works within your business model to drive the best outcome.
All right. Thank you. Here, recognizing what you've had to do, over the last 6 months with moving 1,000 plus of your sales reps into remote work, how do you see that from the question around inside sales versus field sales, and in particular in building trust?
Yeah, Grace, I agree with Reagan completely. I think no particular channel is going to go away at any point in time. I think field force and the importance of field force is as much important and as much critical as we build and establish capability for some of the new channels like that of inside sales. And I think this particular answer is really a function of what is your industry type, what is the competitive landscape, what are the products or services that you are selling, and how you are reaching out to your customers, and what are the customer unmet needs. In fact, in my organization, we've seen examples of all three, where we have experimented and successfully established inside sales as an independent channel, where we have the great strength of our field teams in areas where we would find difficult to substitute that with inside sales. And we've also set up an hybrid model wherein this collaboration between inside sales and the field teams that eventually builds in better productivity. So when you put customer at the center and try and understand what are the unmet needs and how you can approach that to solve better on one side, and then you put your field force and your stakeholders at the center, and then think, how do we improve productivity, thereby impacting on better customer experience. So that's how I would look at it.
Good. Carolyn, anything you want to add?
I pretty much agree with him completely, actually. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, Reagan did recapped it well around understanding your customers, how they want to be engaged and served, and then looking back as far as your business model, and see how what are the trade-offs and the prioritization that you need to have. Okay, so what we'll do now is I actually want to share a quote that Satya Nadella recently shared while he was doing his first quarter earnings call. He shared, he stated that the next decade of economic performance for every business will be defined by the speed of their digital transformation. So Mihir, Reagan, and Carolyn. So we'll start with Mihir and then Reagan and Carolyn. We've spoken about our discussions on looking back before and during, during the height of pandemics. I shared some gold nuggets around the key learnings and the opportunities. And now that we're focusing on the industry, the focus is on the recovery, especially in this region. As we close off the session, what would be the two things that you would like the audience to take away in terms of digital transformation and enabling and sustaining a digital culture in sales?
Okay, so thanks, Grace. And so let me share three things. Number one, and actually the first thing that I evolved as a part of our conversation today, is always remember technology is as good as the ecosystem it operates in. And the best people to understand that ecosystem and then adapt technology, that would be best suited to drive transformation is you. You have that context no better than anyone else. So there are a lot of elements that make a particular technology successful or not. And you will see examples wherein certain industries are better vis-a-vis other industries. So make sure that you make that distinction and then make those choices. Second, it is important that we are lifelong students. Let's ensure that we keep learning, we continue to grow, we continue to adapt to the emerging scenarios. And that learning, once adapted to your own industry ecosystem, will, of course, give you more examples and thereby more opportunities to drive transformation. And third, do not forget on ruthless prioritization to drive execution excellence. Prioritize or perish. That's an unwritten rule. That's something that you should always remember. Thanks. Back to you, Grace.
Right. Prioritize or perish. Love it. Right. Reagan.
Continuing on here, and I completely agree with what you just said. I love that line at the end. I think the first one for me is having a growth mindset and being open to change. So the most important thing is being able to understand that change is always going to occur and it's going to be an evolution, as we've been talking about. And you've got to be open to embrace that change and create a culture within your organisation that is open to doing things differently and challenging the status quo. So firstly around culture and mindset. And then the second thing, continues with what Mihir was talking about, is deliberate planning. You can't just assume that something's going to happen overnight. You can't just wait for the next black swan event. You need to be diligently planning your strategy and planning your digital transformation journey so that then you're set up that when change does occur that you potentially preempted or you're prepared for, it's not a mad rush, it's not chaos. You've already got a journey that you're going along. So that mindset piece and then really focusing on that deliberate and structured planning.
Completely agree with both the sentiments there. For me, I would say that definitely listening to your customers because their growing needs and their ever-changing expectations are always evolving. So being able to listen and be adaptable so that you can actually morph and refine your business model accordingly to ensure that you're always adding value to your customers. And the other one's really about having a very open mindset and active learning. So being able to constantly upskill, regardless of where you are in a hierarchy in an organization. I think we all have our own part to upskill to remain relevant in this digital era. May it be at a personal level, may it be from a professional level, being able to be open to different perspectives, but also upgrade yourself constantly.
Great. Thank you. I just want to thank everyone for dialing in or for joining us in today's live stream. And a special thanks to Carolyn, Reagan, and Mihir for joining us today's episode. We'll have another series of Live with Sales Leaders in the new year. But I just want to say thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Grace. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Grace. Thanks, everybody.